Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Al24 Nightly News. I'm your host, Miriam Zien, and here are your top stories. After the American and British raids targeted sites in the Yemeni capital Sana'a and other governorates, the Houthi group describes the step as blatant aggression and threatens to retaliate. Hezbollah, Hamas, Moscow and Algeria hold Washington and London responsible for its repercussions on the security of the region. The World Court concludes the hearings of the lawsuit against the Zionist entity on charges of committing genocide against Palestinians. The South African Minister of Justice confirms that the entity failed to refute its accusation of genocide. And on the 98th day of genocidal war on Gaza, the occupation committed 13 new massacres during the past hours, leaving 151 martyrs, and the United Nations warns of the repercussions of the occupation's refusal to allow aid into the northern strip or into the northern Gaza Strip. Hello again and welcome. As you've just followed in our top stories, the United States and the United Kingdom launched strikes against Houthi targets in Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen on Thursday. The US said that more than 60 targets were hit in 16 different locations. And according to Houthis, there were a total of 72 strikes. As a result, a spokesman for Ansarullah al-Houthi group said Friday that Yemen had been subjected to blatant American-British aggression, stressing that his group would continue to target Zionist ships and those heading to its ports. And following the American-British airstrikes, the Houthi group reported 5 fatalities and 6 injuries. Yahya Sarriya, the Houthi military spokesperson, vowed retaliation, accusing the aggressors of supporting Israeli strikes in Gaza or Israeli actions in Gaza. Let's take a listen.
As part of its support for continued Israeli crimes in Gaza, the American and British enemy launched a brutal aggression against the Republic of Yemen, with 73 raids targeting the capital Sana'a and the governorate of Hodeidah, Taiz, Hajjah, and Saada. The raids resulted in the fall of 5 martyrs and the injury of 6 other members of our armed forces.
Lebanon's Hezbollah condemned on Friday the US and Britain attack on Yemen. The armed group added that the American aggression confirms that the US is a full partner in the tragedies and massacres committed by the Zionist enemy in Gaza, saying that this will boost Yemen's strength and resolve. The Islamic resistance movement, Hamas, also condemned the US-Britain attack on Yemen. The group added in a statement that the US and Britain will bear the responsibility for their attacks' impacts on the security of the region. Algeria has also expressed its deep concern and regret over the American-British bombing that targeted several Yemeni cities, stressing that this dangerous escalation will undermine UN efforts and other countries' efforts to find a solution to the conflict in Yemen. A statement by the Algerian Foreign Ministry makes clear that Algeria reiterates its emphasis that the issue of maritime security in the Red Sea cannot be addressed by ignoring the clear link that everyone sees between the Houthi attacks on commercial ships and the massacres committed by the Zionist occupation in the Gaza Strip 3 months ago. According to the same source, Algeria reiterates its stance in favor of ending military operations because of their disastrous consequences on international peace and which unarmed civilians bear the cost of. And in the same line of thoughts, Russia has requested an urgent meeting of the United Nations Security Council to discuss Yemen's strike-in by the US and Great Britain. It's worth recalling that the US and Britain launched strikes from both the air and sea against Houthi military targets in Yemen. And Democratic and Republican lawmakers criticized Joe Biden for unauthorized strikes on Yemen, sparking concerns among experts about a potential regional escalation. Islam Said reports.
Most urgent question of our time.
In a bold move, President Joe Biden's decision to strike Houthis in Yemen without congressional approval has triggered bipartisan backlash. Lawmakers from both sides, expressing outrage, argue that this move reignites the ongoing debate over the constitutional authority to declare war in the United States. On Thursday night, Biden announced a joint effort with the US, UK, and 8 other Western coalition countries to launch air and naval strikes on over a dozen sites in Yemen. Via X platform, Congress members from both the Republican and Democratic parties deemed Biden's decision as unconstitutional, citing a violation of Article 1, which mandates congressional approval for military actions.
It's violating an article of the Constitution by carrying out airstrikes in Yemen without congressional approval. The American people are tired of endless war.
These airstrikes have not been authorized by Congress. The Constitution is clear. Congress has the sole authority to authorize military involvement in overseas conflicts. Every president must first come to the Congress and ask for military authorization, regardless of party.
At the United Nations, concerns are raised about the potential escalation of these attacks, warning that Yemen might be drawn into a wider regional conflict, with civilians becoming the primary victims.
We are just extremely worried about the risks and the greater risks of escalation of this, and with the impact on the wider region, the risks that on Yemen itself, which, as we've said before, Mr. Grunberg and his team had worked hard to get parties together, and the people who pay, as it is in every case, are the civilians who don't often have enough of a voice in what is going on.
Amidst this controversy, demonstrators gathered before the White House to voice their rejection of the American bombings in Yemen. They assert that Yemenis are actively combating terrorism and genocide in Gaza. President Biden finds himself in a new impasse, facing criticism and accusations since October 7 for the U.S. support of the Zionist entity in what is described as genocide war. This latest development adds fuel to the ongoing scrutiny of U.S. military actions and their constitutional justifications.
And in the past 24 hours, Gaza reported 13 massacres by the Zionist occupation, resulting in 151 deaths and 248 injuries. The toll since October 7 now stands at 23,708 martyrs and over 60,000 wounded people. Many victims remain unreachable or hidden under the rubble, hindering rescue efforts. Gaza has witnessed multiple assaults on Friday at dawn as occupation aircraft bombed a house in Dir al-Balah's Mashallah neighborhood and also on Al-Zawaidah town and Nusayrat al-Burayj camps. The relentless attacks resulted in casualties as the health system in Gaza is on the brink of collapse. Husam Berkan reports.
The Gaza Strip, enduring aggression for 98 days, witnessed another night of intense bombardment. The occupation ruthless attack persists, with the latest targeting the Al-Shuka area east of Rafah, claiming at least 9 Palestinian lives and causing injuries.
They are targeting civilians in their homes, people who have nothing to do with this, people who just want to live. Why are they targeting them? There is no reason. Even the foundations of the house are destroyed. What are they doing this to them? They were innocent civilians living with their families. Why did they do this? It's unfair. These are safe areas. There are no military activities. There are only people living peacefully in their homes.
Among the casualties were children and families displaced from Al Zina east of Khan Yunis to Dir al-Balah, a location the occupation claimed was safe. Khan Yunis hospitals received 30 martyrs in the last 24 hours due to continuous bombing. The governorate faced relentless raids, sparing neither rescue crews nor ambulances recovering martyrs and transporting the wounded. The occupation aggression extends beyond the south, targeting central areas like the Al-Mashallah neighborhood in Dir al-Balah, where 6 more lives were lost.
The occupying army said it was a safe zone and all these people were just displaced people. The children and the men are nothing but remains. The women are widows and the children are orphans. What was their fault? Does anyone care about us? Why is everyone silent?
At the same time, artillery shelling at Al-Zawayda town, Nusayrat, and Al-Burayj camps claimed more lives, predominantly women and children. A continuous aggression since October 7th has led to over 23,000 Palestinian casualties. Those spared by the raids endure a life of displacement and homelessness amid disastrous shelter conditions, all while the Strip remains under siege.
And as you followed in our top stories, the United Nations spokesman Stefan Dujarric said that only 3 of 21 aid shipments were able to reach northern Gaza between January the 1st and January the 10th. As the Zionist war machine continues to implement genocidal plans. This comes as the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in the Palestinian territories said that the occupation authorities systematically prevent it from reaching the northern Gaza Strip to deliver aid, adding that such actions hinder the humanitarian operations there.
And the operations in the north have become increasingly more complicated. We had systematic refusal from the Israeli side of our effort to get there, to access the north. In normal circumstances, we would notify the parties that we are going to a place to deliver assistance. In this case, we are forced to coordinate because there are checkpoints that we can simply not go through.
As mentioned in our top stories also, the International Court of Justice in The Hague concluded hearings on South Africa's lawsuit against the Zionist Entity, which is accused of committing genocide in Gaza. South Africa seeks interim measures to protect Palestinians and ensure compliance with anti-genocide obligations. The panel of 17 judges is expected to give their decision whether provisional measures should be granted as soon as possible or not. South African Justice Minister Ronald Lamola said on Friday that the Zionist entity had failed its response to the genocide charges brought by his government before the International Court of Justice. Speaking outside the court in The Hague, Ronald Lamola said South Africa remained confident that they had presented a compelling case against Israel at the War Court.
Today we have heard Israel's purported justification before the ICJ. Some of the points made are astonishing and are not backed by facts and the situation on the ground. Israel suggests that the Genocide Convention is primary for their protection and because of that is not capable of violating its own provisions. The state of Israel today has failed to disprove South Africa's compelling case that was presented before the court yesterday.
Still in the same context, the South African Justice Minister stressed that nothing can justify the Zionist genocide against Gaza and its people. Here is Ronald Lamola.
No matter what some individual within the group of Palestine in Gaza may have done, and no matter how great the threat to Israel's citizens might be, genocidal attacks on the whole of Gaza and the whole of its population with the intent of destroying them cannot be justified at all.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa expressed pride that his country filed a lawsuit against the Zionist entity for alleged genocide in Gaza. Ramaphosa stressed that South Africa remained committed to its principles, aiming to halt the genocide in Gaza. He claimed that unless the Palestinian people were freed, the nation could not be independent. Pro-Palestinian protests continued on Friday outside the International Court of Justice in The Hague as the trial session of the Israeli occupation on charges of committing genocide in the Gaza Strip continues. Protesters who followed the proceedings of the trial session via giant screens outside the court chanted in support of the prosecution of the occupation and raised slogans calling for an immediate end to the genocide.
It is an important day for global accountability, so it's important that we all stand here. It's not only about Gaza and Palestine, it's about accountability in international law, and this is much bigger.
The UN Security Council plans an open briefing on the Middle East, including Palestine, with Martin Griffiths and Ilse Brands-Carres expected to provide insights. Earlier, a resolution for a temporary ceasefire and humanitarian corridors in Gaza was discussed during a closed consultation at Malta's request. Al-Quds brigades published scenes from the minefield bombing in an occupation supply line and supporting forces. Al-Quds brigade also targeted a Zionist infantry force in southern and eastern Gaza. Let's have a look.
اللهم سدد رمياتنا وسدد عضلاتنا اللهم آمين.
Al-Qassam brigades reported engaging occupation forces in Nur al-Shams camp, Tulkarem, resulting in clashes and forcing the invaders to retreat. The resistance achieved direct casualties against the occupation forces during the confrontation. Algerian National People's Assembly Speaker Ibrahim Boughali met with the Iranian Shura Council Speaker Mohammad Bagher Kalibaf in Tehran. Discussions revolved around enhancing bilateral cooperation, particularly at the parliamentary level. Boughali emphasized the importance of unity among Arab countries in addressing the Palestinian issue.
The notable ties between our nations have the potential to enhance bilateral cooperation, particularly at the parliamentary level, leading to more prosperous horizons. By investing efforts and fostering bilateral cooperation, there is an opportunity to bolster the economies of both countries. Moreover, the matter of Palestine transcends religious boundaries. It is not solely an Islamic concern, but more importantly, a humanitarian issue. Addressing this challenge necessitates fostering unity among Arab nations.
And for more international news, let's follow this report by Nabil Khazini.
Following the Ecuadorian government putting in place a nationwide state of emergency to restore law and order from organized crime groups, a sense of normalcy has returned to the Ecuadorian capital, Quito, on Friday. Earlier on Wednesday, Ecuador's president, Daniel Noboa, declared that his nation was entering a new era. China's manned space agency said the Tianzhou-6 cargo craft, tasked with carrying supplies for China's space station, separated from the station combination. The cargo craft is expected to re-enter the atmosphere in a controlled manner in the future. A group of runners risked frostbite and iced eyebrows as they took part in the world's coldest marathon in extreme conditions. The race took place in Siberian town Oymyakon, known as the world's pole of cold, the most glacial permanent settlement on the planet. Local hardly stood along the track to cheer on the brave runners in -52 Celsius. Russia said it intercepted a Ukrainian missile in addition to hitting 2 Ukrainian ammunition depots, while Ukraine alleged it had struck a Russian ammunition depot and a command post. Russian Ministry of Defense said the Russian forces had caused damage to Ukrainian concentrations of manpower and equipment during the past 24 hours.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was it for tonight's news edition. Thank you for joining us. And if you missed any part of our broadcast, you can always check our social media platform. Thank you.